I was born in the front room of our house at Penshurst, 39 Arcadia Street. When I was 2 years old, we moved to Tamworth because there was no work for Dad in Sydney. There was a strike on with the carpenters, so he worked for his brother in the fruit markets and auctioneering business in Tamworth. My dad was my hero, my mate, and I loved him dearly. Dad was in the First World War. He was a first Australian light horse. Some of the things they saw and had to do were, pretty terrible. But he came back home and he married Mum, who nursed him somewhere along the track when he was in hospital because he'd got dysentery or something while he was over there. We didn't have much money, but Dad had a good garden and we grew all our own veggies. He used to sell the flowers on one side to the hotels in Tamworth. So we made a few bob there, and he always used to buy old furniture at the markets and do it up. He could do anything with timber, make all sorts of things. Every harvest season he would go out and work the harvester. That was the old days when they had bags, and he was the bag sewer. And he'd come back after about 6 weeks away, and we just carried on as normal. We got on real well together. Only had one pair of shoes, that was for Sunday. And Dad used to clean those every Saturday night, whether they were dirty or not. Mum was the administrator of justice. Yeah, I used to cop it off her. Only ever copped it bad off Dad. That's when he came home from harvesting and didn't know that he was coming home then, and he walked in the back door and he saw Mum and I having a little discussion. She was going to give me a belting and I wasn't going to have it. And Dad dropped his kit bag, I can still see him to this day, walked over, took the strap off Mum and gave me a daddy of a hiding, says, "Son, don't mess with your mother." And, no, he's a good fellow, I love Dad. When we moved back to Sydney, we had our house, which we'd had before we moved to Tamworth. They'd had a nail driving competitions, I think, because every room had nails everywhere. So we spent weeks and weeks cleaning it up, getting it ready, and we had a big garden at the back that ran along the back of the next 3 places. So that was our garden up there. I had my chook pen. Mum used to take me fishing. She'd sit down on the rocks while I tried to fish, and we used to go down to the Georges River. I was in the Boys Brigade down there. That was at Mortdale, and then later on when I got a bit older I went out and helped out at Lugano. And after we'd finished our Boys Brigade at night, this captain of the place would take me out prawning. We'd go out prawning in the Georges River. I'd come home at about 11 o'clock at night, and Mum would get up and cook these prawns and we'd have a feed together. There was always something to eat at our place. It was a bit hard. The war was on, and we had to dig our own air raid trenches in the yard. So at lunchtime and that, we'd be all out there with a pick and a shovel and digging these air raid trenches that we never ever used anyway. And then when I finished primary school, I went to Sutherland High School. I did first year there, but they had no sport, and that was no good to me. So after a year I said, no, that's it, I'm finished. And then I went to Hurstville Tech, did a technical course there and passed my intermediate certificate. But I love woodwork and metalwork, and something to use your hands, none of this fancy stuff. Went for a cadetship in the Navy, had to sit for this exam, but it was all kids from the GPS schools that got in. That was would have had to go to Melbourne. But my brother Arthur, he joined the Air Force, so he was an aircraftsman. He didn't live with us for a long while because he looked after Nan, Mum's mother. She'd had a stroke and fell into a copper of boiling water. When they found her, she was part paralysed, so he used to look after her while my auntie went out music teaching. I didn't see much of Arthur. I think with Joan, my next sister, she and I were pretty close. And it's only in the latter years that I've been extra good with my younger sister. I've certainly appreciated all that she's done, for Joan anyway, especially since she's been in hospital. My sister Joan and I used to do a bit of singing together, and we were asked to go to the Sydney City Mission Place. So we sang one song and then they got us to do another one, and then the minister got up to give his message, and God spoke to me and says, "Here you are doing all this singing about me, yet you've never given your life to me." So that night I asked the Lord to come into my life. And so that's a kid of about 17, I suppose. Mum's brother owned a big manufacturing place in Chippendale in Sydney. He used to make parts for the Schweppes drink machines. And his brother, who lived down the road from us, used to do bits at night. So I'd go down and I learned to operate a lathe and drills and all that sort of stuff, and used to get 9p an hour for working down there. So 3 hours at night, 27p. Then I worked at White Bay Power Station as the power station junior, mainly night shift. I'd get there and I'd see all these fellows carting blankets out of their lockers, and I never could work out what it was all about. And I said to one fellow, "What's all the blankets for?" He says, "Oh, we go to sleep." I thought, that's a bit rough. I'm doing all your work, running around, checking meters and all sorts of things. Then I got an apprenticeship as an electrician on the railway. I did that for 5 years, working on various buildings and stations, doing a lot of work there. Enjoyed it all, I suppose, but I wasn't much of I didn't like it. I like to do something practical. Then I ended up at Redfern at the depot there, worked there for quite a while, and then when I finished my time, they sent me to Lithgow. And Lithgow was a cow of a place. It was cold, it was winter. I wore a leather overcoat every day going to work. If it wasn't raining, it was so cold. They wouldn't let me come back to Sydney, so I said, hang it. I got out of the railway. I worked at a lift place, fixing elevators and all that, escalators, like the big escalators at Wynyard Station, which was the only place that had a big escalator at the time. This mate of mine, Jack Power, he and I were apprentices on the railway together, and we got talking one day and he said, "Oh, there's a beaut sort up at Wentworthville, it'll do you." So I went to this meeting and she was there, and the next day at work he said, "Well, what'd you think?" I said, "She'll be right, she's good." So we started going together. I used to go up to Wentworthville, and because there was always something with the young people, either going here, going there, somewhere else, and got in well with them. I used to ride my push bike, it was about 20 mile, and I'd stop there on Saturday night and go to church on Sunday and then ride back home. Her grandfather was there one day when I was there, and he said, "What are you doing here, hanging around these, which one of the Sheilas are you after?" He was a cow of a fella. Then when I got transferred to Lithgow, I used to get a letter from Mum every 2 or 3 days, and so we became engaged. I was 22, I think, when I got married, and she was on time, so, which was one of my things I said, you've got to be on time. My brother John was best man, and Jack Power, and Mum had Joan, my sister, and Shirley. We were going to go down the south coast for our honeymoon, and Elaine's mum come and said, "Oh, Papa says you can have the house up at Batteau Bay." So I said, "Oh, that's all right." Nan come up and said, "The wedding, Papa's coming up tomorrow, during the week." And I thought, oh no. Anyway, him and his wife came up. Mum and I were out in the room, and he had a cowbell under the bed, all sorts of things, and at 6 o'clock in the morning he'd come yelling out, "Right, you honeymooners, get out of bed." And he was a fair cow, Papa. I copped a lot from them. I spent a bit of the honeymoon underneath the house looking for white ants and spraying for white ants for him, because he couldn't get underneath. But anyway, it was our honeymoon. But we worked hard on our house. We built it virtually ourselves. We just liked Wentworthville. There was no road, made road. I used to, when it rained heavy, I used to take my shoes and socks off up the top of the hill and walk down to home. The church was just up the road. One of the fellows from the church came down, he was a builder one day, and he looked at the roof, he says, there's something wrong with that roof. So he got in and put more timber in. It was only, originally I wanted 3 bedrooms, but Elaine's father said, 2 bits of kids and you've got a 3-bedroom home. So we just kept adding. Put another room out the back, and then we made a bigger area for the family room sort of thing. We used to have the young people down there quite a lot, playing all sorts of games, and had the back veranda, and it made a world of difference. Even when Mum was expecting Yvonne, she was out helping me shovel mixed concrete for the pathway, the driveway. So we'd built the garage, and some of the fellows from the work came and helped me build the garage. Those were the days when you didn't have all the restrictions and what you can do and what you can't do. But the house is still standing today, still got fibre around the outside. When Yvonne was born, she was born at Crown Street. When she was ready to have the child, I was a bit concerned. Pop was going to take us in, and I said, Pop, I think she's got to go. And he said, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that around the farm, and Pop had to do his little job at home before he could take us. And, it was a bit of a hairy ride in. I was sitting in the back of the ute. Mum and her mother were in the front with Pop. We got to Fort Street, and they said, well, you get out, we'll call you when we're ready. I wasn't allowed to be there. Those were the days when we were banished. And I saw the baby after she was born. Yeah, I think the next one, Robin, was born at Parramatta Hospital. Probably got together one day and said we might make another one, so I don't know. No, it's just happened. But when the 4th girl, I said, well, that's it. We can't have 5 girls, it'd be too many. No, I think we tried to give the kids the best growing up that we could. I've got to say that she did most of the looking after them, because I was away a lot, and I was away on the trains, travelling all around the countryside. I used to go to Parks, Dubbo, Grafton, Armidale, Melbourne, Canberra. Anyway, I was going to out west one day, and the train caught fire at Bathurst. And the carriage was completely burnt out by the time we got all the passengers and everything out. No one was injured, thankfully, except the conductor. I hit him on the head with something when I was pulling bits of the place to get him out of the place. So I did that for quite a few years, but I enjoyed my time on the trains. I loved the fact that I was in charge of the air conditioning and the power vans and all the rest of it. We were in church one Sunday morning, and there was a lady from the Far West Mission talking in church, and she had with her this little Aboriginal boy. She's telling us about it, how that she'd rescued him from a fire. The parents kicked him out, and he was around there, this fire, trying to keep warm, and she rescued him because he was getting too close and that. The parents were drunken people and didn't care about him, so she brought him back down to Sydney, and she made an appeal about if anyone could look after him for a while. So we went home from church and couldn't eat dinner properly. I was thinking about this fellow. And so I looked at Elaine and she looked at me and she said yes. So we had a little prayer about it. And I rang the lady up and I said yes. I said we'd like to take him for a while. I think his name was Neil, but we called him Noel. And he was as black as black as black. And of course my kids were as fair, as fair, as fair. Put him in a room at night and turn the light off, you couldn't find him. He was so black. So we had him for quite a while. In those days I was working on the railways, and we used to have to go down to Central Station to collect our pay every fortnight. So I'd take him in one hand and one of my blonde daughters in the other, and go down the train, get my pay, and all the fellows used to give him sixpence. They thought it was wonderful, but people would look at you, and you're just blonde, as black as black. Anyway, there was another couple in the church who were English and they were dark, and they wanted to adopt him, so they'd adopted him, but he caused an awful lot of problems in later life. He was going for the girls and trying to get into bed with them and all the rest of it, and so they had to get rid of him. Didn't hear any more for a long, long while, and then had a letter from a sheriff or something and wanted to know about him. He was in trouble somewhere else. Yeah, that was an experience, but he was a character. Then I thought, oh, get the boss's job. But after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, you couldn't keep the blokes back from going down the pub. And I thought, well, someone's going to get killed here one day, so I gave that job away and left. And I worked for an insurance company. That was the worst thing I ever did, trying to sell insurance. I wasn't persuasive enough. So then I got a job within the opal business, going up to Lightning Ridge, buying and selling stuff. I was sent overseas twice. I went to New Zealand, I went to Hong Kong, Singapore. And I took Mum with me once when I went overseas, and the boss paid for our accommodation. I paid a fare over and we had a lovely time. When I went to Hong Kong, I wanted to stop a few days, but he wanted me to go to Lightning Ridge on the Monday. So I had to come back on the Friday night and go to Lightning Ridge the next day. He used to drive up. The boss had a V8 Valiant station wagon. And then another couple of times I'd fly up to Walgett and someone would come out and pick me up. And when the boss told me about this, I said, well, how am I going to get from Walgett to Lightning Ridge? I've got about £60,000, I think, in those days with me. And he said, oh, you'll be right, don't worry, someone will pick you up. Anyway, I got onto the plane and I knew the fellow because I'd met him before. And he said, you ever flown before? I said, no. He said, well, would you like to fly this to Ridge? I said, yes. He said, you do this, do that. So he said, I want you to keep it at this altitude and this speed and all the rest of it. So I flew the thing to Lightning Ridge. He wouldn't let me land it, I don't know why. We had a car up there and used to go around and buy off all the fellows. One night afternoon I was buying, and these fellows come in and showed me some stuff. I said, no, look, it's not what I'm after. You buy. And I said, no, I'm not going to buy it. And they started to threaten me, so I packed up and put all my stuff in the motel safe, and I said, that's it. And I came home. We had a mine out there as well, and we'd go down there and fiddle around. Then we'd come home and have something to eat. Then we'd go into town and we'd start to buy. And we would buy till the sun went down a bit and you couldn't see the right colours. So we'd come home and stash the stuff around somewhere and have a bite to eat, and we'd go down and work in the mine then. And I used to love it, being down there in the mine, even on my own when I used to go up there. I used to go down on my own with a lantern and pick away, spend hours down there. And then we had a fellow who lived not far from us out there, and he used to come down and scare the living daylights out of us at times. Come down the ladder and yell out at you, and you'd wonder where it was coming from. So they were good old days. On a Friday afternoon, if I couldn't get the bank to put the money in and to put the opals away, well, I'd stash them around at home. I used to have them in the dryer. I used to have them in the washing machine. I had tins out in the shed that I used to put them in. And the money, you know, I'd have £5,000 or £6,000, I suppose it was in those days. Never worried me, one bit. When I used to go to Melbourne with a bag full of stuff, I'd probably have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth or pounds worth of stuff. And if I wasn't going to sit in the hotel room with it all night, so I used to pull the front off the air conditioner and stash the stuff in there and go out and have dinner and wander around town, then come back and get it all back again. And then we got hold of a jeweller who would put it in his safe for us. But that only, I don't know, something went wrong and they wouldn't accept it anymore. They reckoned it was too much of a risk. I never told the boss where I used to put it though. But even after we sold the house at Wenty and moved to Swansea, we had put in a shower bath module, fiberglass one. And I used to store some of the stuff up there, and I found a bag of opal up there from David Oldfield's. There was probably only about 30 or 40 pounds worth, or dollars worth or something. We had a change of ownership, and I didn't like the new owners. They did things that I didn't think were ethical. So then I got rung up the same night that I finished up from a fellow in Adelaide asking me to be his Eastern States manager. So that 2 years, or 2.5, 3 years, I did that till he sold out. He used to fly to Adelaide every couple of weeks and down to Melbourne every 3 weeks. He used to drive to Brisbane and selling opal all the way. I was working at Opals Australia, and I used to walk to the station of a morning and catch a train and go in. For some unknown reason, when I got up near the highway, there was a bus there, and I thought, oh, I'll catch the bus. So I caught the bus into Parramatta, and there was an electric train there, and I got on that. But normally I would catch a steam train that came down from the mountains, because I'd walk to Wenty station and pick it up there from Parramatta. And got on the train, went to work. When I went in, got in the office, I was usually first in. The phone was ringing. Picked it up, said Opals Australia, and it was Rob. And she was sobbing her heart out. I said, what's wrong? And she told me that the train that I'd normally been catching and used to get in the second carriage had hit the pylon at Granville. I think there's about 83 killed in that. Came down on the first and second carriages, and I'd been in the second carriage because all we could get a seat. So that was don't know why the Lord looked after me that day, but he did. I worked in the nursing home at Pendle Hill. There was 120 residents there, one of the best jobs I ever had. I loved the people, and the staff were fantastic, but I had control. I could go down and buy what I wanted as far as maintenance work was concerned, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. But we had the house robbed. I used to do the church collections and bank it, and someone broke in while we were away one day and took the money, and I thought, well, that's enough. I've had enough of Sydney. So we moved to Newcastle, Swansea. It was totally different, although Robin and Wal were close. But we had a nice home, and we enjoyed it there, and we had good neighbours, and I was semi-retired, but I nearly got a job in Kennard's self-storage, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Looking after people's all their stuff. Then the earthquake struck. Mum and I were going into Charlestown, and we got into this shop at Belmont because I wanted to buy a little bit for my boat, and all the stuff kept falling down off the shelves. I thought, oh, this is funny, and so I picked some of it up, put it up, and then the next wave came, and I said to one of the fellas, what's going on? He said, I think we've had an earthquake. So it was my book-off day. I came, I took Mum home, and I started to hitchhike all the way back into Newcastle to see where my boss was. And after about an hour and a half, I got in there, and the place was a mess. The boss had shot through, and we had all the top of the building was part demolished. One of the sheds on the side was all bashed in. So I had full-time work there for quite a while we straightened everything up, cleaned it up, made a mess of Newcastle, the earthquake, quite a few people killed, but we got out. We only had at home, we only had one picture fall off the wall, but other people had a bit more damage. And then I retired. Went on a few trips with Neil and Margaret Anderson and Shirley and Ken. Thoroughly enjoyed life. And then we thought, well, we'd like to come up to Alstonville. Bob and Joan lived out at Ellis Road, and they would go away on their holidays and we'd come up and look after the place, and we fell in love with the place as far as an area was concerned. So we bought this house in Arrowsmith Avenue where we were very, very happy. Had a lovely garden there. My daughter and her husband had this block of land at Grafton, and they were cleared it because there was a lot of trees on it, and they had this big heap of stuff that had been burning for a while, and me, being the character that I am, went down and tried to put it all together and burn it. And for some unknown reason, I fell while I was there. And I put my hand up to protect my face, but went right into the red hot embers. So I picked myself up and looked at it, and I thought, oh, I've done something. Said, oh, well, I grabbed the rake and started to rake it up again. I thought, oh, that's a bit bad. So I started to walk up and I yelled out to Alan, and he saw something was wrong and he raced down, and next thing I know, I'm in the car hurtling into Grafton Hospital. But I got no after effects of it, but I didn't want to muck up my face. She got bitten by a spider, a little white spider in the garden. She was concerned about it, and she went to the doc about it and said about this, and she said, oh, that's got to come out. That's cancerous. So that was the start of her troubles, in and out of hospital, and I don't know what would have happened if that lady hadn't picked that up. There's some little white spider that sort of started it all off. But for the whole of the time that she was sick, I never heard her once complain, save by me. She was very calm and collected about it all. She said, well, if that's what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. Made a world of difference that instead of her ranting and raving about things, it was just calm acceptance of what was dished up to her. Even in the hospital, they used to say, "Elaine, you've got to complain." She says, "Why?" And I think she left an impression on the staff at the hospital. So when Mum died, that put the kibosh on things. I would have liked things doing otherwise. I'd love to have still been around and enjoy the rest of our time together, but when we look back over it, we were blessed. We've had a wonderful life.
I'm not an actress like Dr. Doolittle and his animals were sailing home from Africa. The push me, pull you was on watch. Chanel, go away. Go away.
She never ever saw Hayley and Jack. She knew that Christy was having a baby, and she was so much looking forward to being a great grandmother. She'd have been up to Queensland or down to Sydney. That's the sort of person she was. I think she's left a legacy for daughters to carry on. And I just couldn't hack the house any longer, so I moved down to Riverbend. And that was a new big place starting up down in Ballina, a retirement village. And I was number 3 in the village when it started. Now there's about 400. I had a lovely time there, and then was there for about 2 or 3 years, and I started getting a bit sick. I had stones in the kidney, and I thought, well, better start and look after myself. So I came up here to Maranoa. After Mum died, I was lonely, and I went up to Darwin with another lady, just company, and then later on I caught up with Faye, and we've been mates for about 7 or 8 years now. She lost her husband the same year that Mum died, so I knew him, and Mum knew Faye, and it made a world of difference. and round the race course like a teddy bear. One hop, two hop, tickly underarm. How big are they?
You show Pari how big the chickens are.
Oh, that big. They're monster chickens.
That's a bit of my life story.